Hi, it's Allan here from Loud and Clear Glasgow. I'm delighted to welcome Toby from PMC to our studios in Glasgow, and he's going to give us a little bit of an introduction to the 25i range of loudspeakers, both in passive format and active format. Perhaps you can start off just if you can give us a little bit of background to maybe where this product incarnation came from. I believe there was a historical range.
Yeah, sure. So 25 series originally was developed to celebrate our 25th anniversary at PMC, and before that we had the 20 series, which was again 20th anniversary of PMC. So we've had a whole range of domestic products over the years. 20 series was the first time we actually brought out an entire range as one big product launch. We actually missed the three-way model for the first year, but then we brought it in. But yeah, it was a big development project to create a cohesive line of speakers. Yeah. Very well selling, very popular product range. And then we knew that there was a lot of performance left on the table. Bass driver technology had improved, our understanding of crossover design had improved over the years. So with 25 series, there's a real step up in performance, completely new bass drivers, new design transmission lines. We introduced the laminar parts that smoothed out the airflow at the end of the transmission line. And yeah, it was a complete refresh, and the performance really did bump up in quality, going from 20 series to 25 series.
So what were the kind of key differences between 20 and 25 then?
So the big one really was probably the bass driver technology. It's a much more capable unit, higher excursion, lower distortion, smoother upper mid-range as well. From the cone materials, it's sort of glass fibre weave cone. And then also just crossover development, sort of refining the crossover, realising better integration with the drive units through lowering the crossover point, things like that. Just led to overall much better bass performance, better mid-range performance, and better high-frequency performance. So overall, a better loudspeaker.
Okay. And now more recently, I think just launched by comparative terms, there's now an active version for this.
In between that first, we had the 25i series. So 25 series was, as I say, for our 25th anniversary. That was out for about 4 or 5 years before we then refreshed the range with 25i series. So that was a new tweeter, which you see here. So it was going from a 27mm tweeter to a 19mm tweeter with a large roll surround, which let us even further drop the crossover point, so we even get even better integration between the bass driver and the tweeter, better off-axis performance, more smooth, even dispersion. On the floor standing models, we integrated anti-vibration mounts on the plinths. Okay. So instead of there being a rigid connection between the spikes, the plinth bars and the cabinet, now the plinth bars float on a rubber mount, which means there's no direct connection between the loudspeaker and the floor. So we measured it with accelerometers all over the cabinet. We did have a single resonant frequency in the cabinet, which was from reflected sound coming from the bass driver down the cabinet, vibrations hitting the floor and then bouncing back up from the spikes. Now with the new mounts, they get absorbed at the feet, and the vibration doesn't come back up the speaker and doesn't sort of interfere with the bass driver's motion. So that's another form of reducing distortion that we introduced in the 25i models. Obviously with the new tweeter, it was also complete refresh of all the crossovers to integrate that properly. So yeah, as you alluded to, now as a very recent introduction, we've now got the active upgrade to the 25i series, and this is available either as a full product, you buy an active speaker, or you can have, if you are an existing owner of a 25i or 25 product, so either the refresh or the original 25 product, you can buy the active back panel, and it's a 5-minute upgrade. It's 8 bolts and one connector to take your passive crossover out of the speaker and then put in the active back panel, and you have an active speaker.
So by active speaker, essentially what we're doing is putting the power amplifier stage within the loudspeaker.
Yeah, so actually you can have an active speaker with the power amplifier outside the speaker as well. It's what makes a product active is the fact that the crossover is before the power amplifier. So instead of having an amplified signal that is full range amplified signal going to the speaker and then being split by a passive crossover into the appropriate signals for each drive unit, with an active speaker you take your line level signal from your preamp or whatever source you have, and you split that signal with a crossover. It can be a DSP crossover, or it can be an analog crossover, but the important thing is that it's before the power amplifier. So each drive unit then gets directly coupled to a single amplifier channel, and that the signal that's being fed to that amplifier has already been band limited for that drive unit. So instead of with a passive crossover, basically acts as a bit of a sort of a springy sponge to the signal. You get some time smearing because of the passive components. They're not very linear as they heat up. Resistors, as they heat up, change their resistance value. Inductors can couple to each other. You get large coils of wire near each other. They make magnetic fields that induce current in the other coils of wire. So you can end up with signals sort of passing between drive units and causing distortion that way. Basically, a passive crossover is a large and expensive set of compromises. You can make a very, very high performing passive crossover, and we take great lengths to optimize our passive crossovers to make sure that they perform very, very well. But they are a challenge and aren't ideal, really. With an active crossover, you can use much higher tolerance components, just because of the fact that surface mount components naturally seem to be able to be higher tolerance. So instead of using maybe a 2% tolerance component, we can use a 0.2% tolerance component, so you get more accurate crossovers. You can also use much more complex crossovers. So the active crossovers that we've created for the 25 Active series, they are analog. We're not using DSP crossovers in these, but they are far more complex than what we can achieve realistically with a passive crossover, because they're smaller components and we can use more of them. So we've got 24 dB per octave filters in these, but we've also got shelving filters and a bit of some notch filters to just linearize the drive unit responses a little bit to get an even more accurate response.
So really what you're doing is you're tuning the crossover into the mechanical characteristics of the loudspeaker cabinet and also the drive units.
Exactly. So with the best will in the world, no drive unit is perfectly flat and linear, so we can just massage the response a little bit to get it that little bit more accurate with these. So with the active back panel, we've got either a balanced or unbalanced analog input. There's a sensitivity dip switch, just to, if you've got a very hot preamp or whatever, you can choose to lower the sensitivity slightly, and that's it. It's super, super simple. So it's 2 channels of Class D amplification. You get a selector here where you choose what speaker you have, because all the crossovers for all the models are built into the back panel. You just put it into whichever speaker you currently have, and then you're away to the races. It's quite a simple system, but big upgrade in performance.
Okay, so Class D amplifiers.
It is Class D.
Pros, cons.
So for the longest time, Class D has for a very long time had a very bad rap.
Indeed. And
often rightly so. It used to be quite hard sounding, quite clinical sounding, not very natural. And for a very long time, we've at PMC we've made active products as long as we've existed as a company. Our first ever loudspeaker was an active speaker, and for a very, very long time we only used Class A or Class AB amps because Class D just wasn't good enough. And we refuse to put a technology or a part into a speaker if we don't feel confident that it gives us the best possible performance. Recent years, Class D technology has got an awful lot better, and we're now at a point where we're comfortable using it in our speakers. It sounds good enough to put in our speakers, and so these are ice power modules that we're using. Very, very high performing, very low distortion, and they sound really excellent. To put it in perspective, we're developing these loudspeakers. We have a set of reference amplifiers that we use at work, which are incredibly high quality amplifiers, Class AB amplifiers, and as we were developing the active versions of the 25i series, we were A/B testing between the passive version, driven by these very high quality reference amplifiers, and the active versions. And in every single case, the active version sounds better than the passive version with £5,000-10,000 amplifier driving it. So it's a significant improvement in quality.
Okay. There's no EQ on board?
No, so the entire signal chain is analog in these. So it's an analog active crossover. We have a lot of customers who are very big into their vinyl, and they like that whole analog signal chain. There's also factors of, you could go down the route of integrating streaming services and all that sort of thing into the amplifier. It gets a lot more complex and a lot more expensive, and also it's then liable to going out of date. And so it's quite nice to have a system that we know will always be very high performing. It's never going to become redundant, or it won't connect to this service anymore because the services no longer exist. So we want to make a product that will maintain its quality and its relevancy as long as possible.
Absolutely. Great. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks very much, Toby. Great stuff.
Thank you.